everyone. Alright, so I'm going to show you now the 4-quadrant method, the transfer from your actual looking at your photo to doing it on your paper. You should have already posted this on the previous assignment to show me that this is the layout that you chose. Again, you could have chose the 4-quadrant, same size also, same size paper as the photo. And remember, this was just doing the halfway point I showed you in the video prior to this where you were setting up your transfer, that you were just finding the halfway vertical and then the halfway horizontal for both either larger scale or same size scale, half and half. So when you do this transfer now from quadrant to quadrant, remember the quadrant size, if you're scaling up, is going to be a little larger. So you do need to kind of figure out how far from the top of the object or the side of the object to that actual framed quadrant are things happening. So for this wine bottle, it does drop down a little bit from the top. So that's going to be about right there. It does not touch that edge there. So the neck of the bottle starts to come down here with a little gap, right? I have the same gap. I don't know if you guys can see this. I'll darken my lines. Again, please remember your 4 form structures. This right here is just a narrow cylinder. So I'm kind of following that same narrow cylinder concept. That curve of that bottle, if I kind of look at my quadrant here on the top left side, that quadrant is about a little less than half of this here. So those curves start to happen about at this point. So I kind of find the halfway, drop down a little. This is where those curves of that bottle is about to start to happen. So I want to make sure that I'm placing things in the exact spots that I'm seeing them. The side portion of the bottle does get very close to that grid line. So I want to mirror that and bring that down just in the same spot there. The other one I'm going to follow where I place the curve and use that as my angle of where it goes. So we don't see the bottom of the wine bottle, but if I was to assume it ends probably about right there, which if I look is about half of that bottom quadrant. I'm just assuming that that's where the bottle ends. So I'm going to kind of eyeball the halfway of this bottom here also. And even though it's not there, I'm just going to place it in for just to kind of complete that image. So at first I do get a little sketchy with my lines. I will clean up those lines later. Again, I'm using a regular pencil here. And whatever I don't need later, I can always clean up and erase and make better for the final outline of. So now if I look at my candle, it does happen in the right quadrant. If I try to find the halfway point of that quadrant, it is way lower. So, and I can also look at the candle in comparison to the bottle itself. So this bottle actually needs a little work and shaping, but I can go back to that later. I kind of just I have a base of where it is. It's not the best outline though. Wine bottles are any bottle is complicated because you're trying to mirror those two sides, that's where the challenge does come in. So if I look at where my candle is, if I look at where it ends, the edge of it, it actually is halfway vertically. So I'm going to mark that's where my end of the right side of the candle is going to be. And I'm going to then start like a cylinder with that oval top. I'm going to look for how far down does it come down in that bottom quadrant. So guys, when I'm doing quadrant drawing, I'm doing a lot of relationship to the quadrant's placement along with relationship to the object placement. Like if I look at where the candle is in relationship to the wine bottle, it does happen at the bottom of that little side curve, which I want to kind of mirror in my drawing. So my candle is about right there. The other side of it is kind of sitting right on that grid line. Again, I'm drawing kind of sketchy and a little darker than you guys should. Remember, your outline should never be so dark because no form is going to have super structured outline. It's going to have the values that are going to create that form to look like what it is. The last object will be this little vase here. It does get a little, right side of it is in quadrant, the right side quadrant at the bottom. So I'm actually going to place that where I see it. It does almost touch the bottom of the page, so I'm going to kind of map in these sections. That's my right side. That's the bottom. The left side, I do get a little space from the corner, and if I look at the relationship of where the wine bottle ends in relationship to how much this kind of curves out, it's going to be about right here. So I kind of like mapped in the sides, the bottom, and even the top. If I look at the top compared to that top quadrant line, I want to give that same amount of space. So this is like my sphere kind of template of where that vase is going to go. So now I could start to look at the actual form. It does start with a sphere-like top for the portion that has that like inserted area right there. It does come down a little bit with a curvy kind of line. And then if I wanted, I could actually make this like a sphere at first, just to get that like circular form. And then I could kind of bring this line into this one with a nice transition. Bring this line into this one with a nice transition, and then kind of complete it. Again, I'm being very sketchy and a little darker with my lines than you should be because I want you to be able to see it in the video. But again, you want to be super light with your contour because you will be adding value to these later. And once you add the value is, so like when we do add the value, just for a quick little intro to the next section, this line is then going to start to blend into the bottle so that the actual line is going to disappear. It's going to be the value that transitions that form to have that 3D form to it. And then the lines will then just become not a line. It's just the value sitting next to value. So this would be the outline that I'm looking for in the end result of your quadrant drawing, which I'll then post to the Harbor for this assignment. All right, guys, happy drawing.